Okay, that's a frog, is it?
Yeah.
Sounds like a fire alarm, mate.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's a frog. It could double as a fire alarm if it doesn't like fire and would call when seeing it.
I'm imagining this animal to be quite weird.
Oh, interesting.
To me, an animal that makes a noise like this... Okay, so I've got two sort of directions of thought here. One, it's going to be like some weird blobby thing that lives underground and it very seldom shows its face on the surface.
Okay. Yeah.
Or it's going to be something with like a really long, thin, hooked face, like strange. You know, like the ones that, you know, the frogs that have the teeth that can bust out of the jaw. Then they look like a duck.
Yes, I know the ones. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think because it sounds like a sort of bird, maybe that's why I'm going that way with it. I'm just thinking ahead to our species that we're talking about in the main paper, and it's a sort of sub-Saharan African species. So maybe that's a link. Yeah, I think it's going to be some kind of rain frog from Africa. I'm going to go with a name which I'm creating, but, you know, it could be a species. The African rain frog. The Saharan rain frog.
I'm afraid you're nowhere near.
Right, well, I'm turning off this call then. I've had enough of it. What is it?
So this is the call of Philoderma corticale, which is the Vietnamese mossy frog, or the Tonkin bug-eyed frog, or the moss bug-eyed frog, or the mossy frog.
I can't get enough of mossy frogs.
They're beautiful. So this is a little frog. I think it's only 62 millimeters in length and looks like, well, it's an adorable sort of big-eyed frog, but looks like it's covered in moss. Hence the name, mossy frog.
I see the link. The link is being popular in captivity here.
Oh, I didn't have that link, but that'll work as a segue to the paper, most certainly. I have very little information about these guys, other than they'll curl into a ball when frightened.
How big do they get?
Only 62 millimeters.
Yeah, okay. Because I was thinking of milk frogs. Milk frogs are the ones which are always bigger than you think. They're actually disgustingly large. Wow, okay, mossy frog. Well, I would never have guessed that that's what they sound like. I can imagine
sound, right?
Honestly, makes them seem like less appealing pets if they make that sound.
Like a
That'd
weird
really
haunting flute
annoying.
Or something.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
And what is that called? Is that a call? I mean, it's a male calling. Is that advertisement call? Do we know, or is it just sort of indeterminate frog
know.
shouting? Okay.
Cool details. Click here. It was recorded in Germany. That's what I.
Okay, so yeah, not a native individual then. It's somebody's pet. This guy.
I don't know,
but
or
still,
it was uploaded in Germany. I honestly don't know.
Very good. Mossy frogs.
They're from Vietnam area, North Vietnam.
Okay, so like
next to the Gulf of Tonkin.
Southeast Asian.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Well, yeah, nice to think about the mossy frog. Anyway, before we barrel roll into our paper for this episode, we're up on episode 181. This is Herpetological Highlights. I'm Tom Major, co-hosting with me, Ben Marshall. As you just heard, another unsuccessful guess at a frog call. We're still on 2 each, despite many years of effort.
It's a stupidly difficult thing to do.
There's no discernible trace of improvement.
Amphibian vocalizations either, so it's...
And also, yeah, the only hope is that we'll remember one we've already heard, but we're never going to have the same one
we'll never
again.
do anything repeats. And also the names there's so many different frogs out there.
Yeah, but we also don't make any effort to keep a list of what we have done. So in the fullness of time, there will eventually come a time where we do the same one again, and we won't realise. But yeah, I'd be interested to know if anyone who listens along gets these. I can't imagine that many people do. But we've said this before. If you tell us you do, we won't believe you anyway. We'd need it like filmed live by some kind of independent geek.
I reckon people have got a few of them.
Yeah, maybe some.
Definitely.
Probably some real.
Definitely.
Probably some real eggheads listen to this podcast. But yeah, let's move on. Let's move on to our main paper for this week. So this is a paper by Garcia-Elfring, Sabin, Iouchmanov, Roffey, Samudra, Alcala, Osman, Lauderdale, Hendry, Menke, and Barrett, published in 2023. Piebaldism and chromatophore development in reptiles are linked to the tfec gene. This was published in Current Biology.
One of my favourite genes.
tfec. Yes, me too. I like tfec. ever since I heard of it this morning. And royal python, Python regius. We're talking about the royal python, or as our friends across the pond are wont to call it, the bull python. Hearing an English person say bull python is like hearing someone say trash or male. It's not what we would normally say. It sounds strange to us. It's like someone thanking you by saying, I appreciate you. It's like, are you thanking me? I'm not sure. It's an Americanism.
Yeah. So why are they called bull pythons?
Because, Ben... Oh, you got me there. You've got me there, Ben. You've got me there. I did not realise. How on earth did you make that connection that the mossy frog and the royal python both roll into bulls? How did you...
I didn't.
How did this come about? Is that a coincidence?
It's a complete coincidence.
That's crazy to me. That's absolutely crazy to me. What a weird coincidence.
So they roll up in the bulls when they're scared, do they?
You never see one do it. It's kind of adorable.
And then roll down a hill.
As far as I know, they don't roll down hills, but never say never. There is that cartwheeling snake from Malaysia. I can't remember what it's called.
Might have been what I had in the back of my mind, yeah.
Yeah. But no, royal pythons, when they curl up in a ball, they generally just like tuck their head inside their coils and then they just kind of like puff out the body to protect the head, really. And they've got quite fat little tails. It's not like, like a sand boa tail where it's going to be a sort of distraction. But yeah, the protect the head thing is a major defense that gives them the name bull python, and it is also pretty cute when they do that. And they are just pretty cute animals in general.
So next question. Why are they called royal pythons?
Well, I mean, that is a spin-off of the scientific name, Regius.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they're called royal pythons. Do you know why?
No, I don't. Again, I'm continuing to ask questions in absolute ignorance.
Different ideas. There's an article here in Reptiles magazine. Different ideas surround their origin of these common names. But apparently some African cultures worship snakes, so it could be that.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, apparently Queen Cleopatra may have worn a python around her wrist as a bracelet.
A little one, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, pretty, I mean, obviously very popular pet. They come in lots of different colours, native to Western Sub-Saharan Africa. Most people will know what they are. I think because of all these pattern mutations, you can get them in hundreds of different colours, both pattern and colour variations. And it's the genetic basis of one of these kind of interesting mutations that this paper is about. We're talking about piebald royal pythons. I've got to be so careful not to say bull pythons now.
Well, now you've made a thing of it. Yeah, I mean, I
made a thing of it. I know. So royal pythons, piebald. I mean, like, if you've seen one of these snakes, you'll know they are like insanely cool looking. They're really striking. It's a kind of mostly normal coloration, but then with patches of white, like pure, brilliant white on the body. And yeah, it makes for a very, very, very interesting looking creature. The white patches are quite variable. You can have like low white or high white. And in humans, like, patches of white occur on a lot of animals. In humans, it's known as leukoderma or vitiligo. Vitiligo is slightly different because piebaldism is like presumably a genetic mutation, as it's sort of heritable, really clearly heritable, and you're born with it. Whereas vitiligo, which humans can get, is an autoimmune disease where antibodies attack and destroy pigment-containing cells called melanocytes, and that leads to patches of no pigment on the skin, which sort of just look really white. But yeah, so for this paper, they were investigating royal pythons, and this was a team of researchers led by McGill University. And they used various methods like some whole genome sequencing, some gene editing, some electron microscopy, and they're studying the color variations and patterns in the skin of captive bred piebald royal pythons. And should we just talk about, I don't think we need to go too far into the methods. We can talk about the gene editing.
Please, let's avoid the methods at all costs because, quite frankly, I don't understand very much of it.
No, I mean, yeah, I've been doing a bit of genetic stuff, and even though it's fresh in my mind, this stuff's still confusing.
Yeah.
But, and I think it's suffice to say that they pinpointed a specific gene, known as tfec, that not only influences reptile pigmentation in general, but also apparently plays a key role in color variations seen in vertebrates. And, the influence on royal pythons is characterized by these distinctive white blotches. Essentially, they looked at a bunch of snakes that had piebaldism and didn't, and identified this difference in the gene. And they're like, okay, there's a correlation here between this coloration and this gene variant, this mutation.
Yep.
that suggests that maybe the piebald gene is caused by this mutation. How can we take that one step further? All right, let's take that gene mutation and we'll use CRISPR to put it in a different creature. And they chose an anole.
They picked the anole too because it's the only reptile that CRISPR's been used effectively on. So it wasn't just like, we've got some anoles lying around. It was a a purposeful practicality choice. Because you don't want to do something mammalian because you're trying to look at these reptile genes that may be different from mammalian genes for basically expressing the same trait or colour morph.
Yeah.
So brown anole was the model system they picked. Yeah, to CRISPR this piebald like colour mutation gene into, which is nuts.
Into a new animal. It's absolutely insane. It feels super like sci-fi. And yeah, the brown anole Anolis sagrii. Yeah, they plonked it in there, and it had an effect on the lizard. It didn't modify the lizard in exactly the same way. So the genetically modified. It did make a difference. So in royal pythons, this modification to the tfec gene, this nonsense mutation, creates patches of white. In the brown anole, it's slightly different. It does lead to modification of the cells responsible for producing colour. In the brown anole, it ends in hypopigmentation, so that's reduced pigmentation. So they don't have white patches, but they just have generally less brown pigmentation on the body, so they kind of look a bit sort of pale, ghostly. The other interesting effect, because that is an impact on the melanophores, which are the kind of dark pigments containing cells. It also affects iridophores, which are a kind of, they don't produce color, but they produce kind of, it makes things reflective, right? So
it's like iridescenciness, right?
Yeah, it's iridescency, it's reflective. And if you remove it, it can make things appear darker because they're not as reflective.
Right.
And so what they found was that in the F1 hatchlings, these iridescent iridophores, which are reflective, the lack of them makes the eyes appear dark in the royal pythons. So there's this other effect of the tfec gene as well.
You just said F1 hatchlings. F1 hatchlings are the offspring. So they had F0 that was the CRISPR mutant lizards, and then the F1 hatchlings are the offspring of those original CRISPRed individuals, yes?
Right, yeah. And I think
which also shows that this has a, the genetic component which is hereditable.
Yes, yeah. The iridophores thing, that was actually in the annals, not the piebald.
Yes, pythons, it hasn't been ID'd in the pythons. That's one of the things they say in the discussion, is that they need a follow-up study to identify what's being removed or added in the white sections of the pythons, right?
Yeah.
A specific type of scan, they were saying. I forget exactly what it was called.
But yeah, piebald.
TEM imaging is what they were saying.
TEM imaging. I was just wondering if piebald pythons had dark eyes. It's not something I've ever really given any thought to. Maybe. But maybe they would have mentioned it. But yeah, what a beautiful, crazy looking snake. Insane. Love them. Yeah, really excited to see this paper. And, they make the point in this paper that captive reptiles, because there are all these colour mutations, you have this massive stock. There's stuff at Bangor going on to do with this as well. One of my supervisors, John Mully, has done some stuff with his students to do with corn snakes and the sun-kissed mutation, because the sun-kissed mutation has some negative consequences.
Yeah, stargazingness, right?
That's right, yeah. They just can't get enough of the stars, which is obviously not ideal if you're trying to survive. You keep looking at the sky for no reason.
Which is what a nerve system issue, right?
Right, yeah.
Stargazing,
I imagine
they sort of can't right themselves.
So I think that might be it in a more extreme form. That is like the non-writing thing. I don't know. That brings me to mind of like spider royal pythons, which is another mutation which causes them to have like neurological defects, which are really extreme. They like turn upside down and stuff. My friend had one that he rescued it, and like when you fed the snake, it would like start wobbling around all over the place.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like obviously a pretty major issue if you're in the wild.
Well, and probably a pretty major issue if you're captive too, because it's suggestive that you've got some pretty problematic co-mutations with your colour morphs. Yeah,
and that spider gene is something which is like I think hobbyists are kind of self-selecting against that just because it's like frowned upon. People are like, why did you make that?
I mean, it doesn't take much to look at something like, I don't know, dog genetics to see that if you just continue down the route of pure aesthetics, you create abominations that have a really
but
tough
how
time
exciting
living.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. You see the skull of like a pug or something, and you just like, what have we done?
Maybe don't make the same mistake again, guys.
Yeah. Anyway, so they make the point that there's this whole, there's so many populations of captive animals that could be really useful for various studies. I find them really interesting in terms of the like isolation of populations and genetic bottlenecks and how they can respond to that and the kind of consequences of that, because there are a lot of parallels between captive populations, genetically speaking, and introduced animals, and also like isolated rare species and stuff. So yeah, I feel like this is something which is really great that they've sort of taken the time to do and collaborate in that world, and hopefully there'll be more of that coming, because it is a huge pool of expertise and resource that is like underutilized. So yeah,
I do want to dial back my abomination comment, and I'm not suggesting that pugs are abominations, but they probably shouldn't have existed to begin with. I don't want to be insulting anybody's wonderful pug out there.
Yeah, I mean, they're the most endearing, hilarious abominations of all.
Yes, that's...
and the way they breathe is equal parts tragic and hilarious. Yeah. Okay, so I haven't got anything else about royal pythons here. Have you anything else to add on the pigmentation? Just to say, do you know what a piebald horse is? It's quite specific.
Piebald is what? Black and white. Skewbald is brown and white?
Oh, my guy knows his horse colorations. Yeah, correct. But it's probably a different gene, because apparently if you modify the tfec gene in mice, which is the one which causes the problems, or the whiteness in royal pythons, if you modify it in mice, it doesn't affect their coat. So it could be that different mutation is causing the colour in horses.
Yeah, which is really intriguing, isn't it? Because that sort of suggests that there's sort of different colour determining genes in reptiles versus mammals, which I suppose makes sense when you've got mammals just having this one pigment related, I don't know what you call it. Is it a cell type? What is a chromatophore?
Yeah, it's a colour producing cell.
Colour producing cell, whereas reptiles have multiple going on. So I suppose it does make sense that different genes are going to be involved. But
yeah,
I feel like I'm so used for examples to be like, oh look, it's the same gene in all of vertebrates. Isn't that cool? It's kind of intriguing to see that it's different here.
Yeah, reptiles more complicated than mammals, as it turns out in this case.
Seems to be in this regard, yeah.
Well, that's it, I think. Really cool snakes. Great to see a paper about them. Yeah, nice to see some pictures of royal pythons with cool, crazy colours in the paper as well. Have you got any other business for this episode, Ben?
I do have a little bit of any other business. I have a paper which we sort of decided wasn't enough for a full episode, but is worth mentioning. And it's by Chavan and Borkar on observations of cooperative fishing, use of bait for hunting, propensity for marigold flowers, and the sentient behaviour of mugger crocodiles. Now, a while ago, we had a paper that we talked about mugger crocodiles putting sticks on their faces and backs in an attempt to lure in birds desperate for nesting material, only to grab them at the last second. Basically using sticks as sort of camouflage cross potential bait for nesting birds. This is a little bit of a further report on that. Basically, it's happening in other places with different mugger crocodiles. Same species, but different place. But a couple of observations I wanted to describe to you. One was this potential for cooperative fishing, where 3 or 4 mugger crocodiles will swim in circles, almost like... It's a little bit vague what's going on because the water's so murky, so they can't see specifics, but it seems like they're sort of swimming in circles to gather or sort of herd fish into a sort of fish kill zone. You know how whales do that with the bubbles and then one shoots up and grabs them all? It gives me similar sort of vibes to that, but potentially less well documented. And I've seen this a few times with these mugger crocodiles, where they're creating this sort of fish whirlpool, and then the mugger crocodiles are popping out of the whirlpool with fish in their mouths. So it's pretty sort of vaguely reported, but it's kind of super interesting too. So
that sounds wild. I mean, like,
right?
Crocodiles are thought of as like, I mean, they do have all that social behavior when they're looking after their young.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's actually not that big of a leap to think that they might collaborate in other ways as well. But it's just so far from how we've been perceiving these animals for so long that you just think, what? Like, they're working together to create a fish whirlpool. Like, I need to see a video, I feel like, to actually truly believe this.
Yes, I can't find any videos. The images are here, but I couldn't find any videos.
Okay. And was there something about them in marigold flowers as well, which sounds quite charming?
Oh, yeah. I was going to skip over the marigold flower one, to be honest, because it's just that sometimes they're near. So marigolds are used, often floating debris in this river system. They come from like burial rites and stuff like that, I believe is what they say. I'm trying to just double check that that's what it is. But basically marigolds end up in the river through various means. And there's meant to be that marigolds have an antibacterial properties or antimicrobial properties. So maybe the crocodiles are hanging around the marigolds for those benefits. But I feel like that's kind of a leap with just them being seen near marigolds.
Yeah. The fact that that's in there makes the story about them fishing a bit less compelling. Like, what?
That one's a bit of a stretch, the marigold one. The fishing one I find more convincing. There's also some other examples from other species that might be similar, so...
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, I hope we see more about that. That'd be super awesome.
The final one, which is perhaps an even greater leap, but is an intriguing story, is that there's a bunch of feral dogs that hang around this area that are both eaten by the crocodiles, but also just sort of hang around and stay with the basking crocodiles and seem to just be chill at times. And there's this instance where a younger dog is being chased by a pack of feral dogs, and it runs into the river to get away from them. The Mugger Crocodiles, 3 of them, I think it is, approach said dog, which is hiding in the water away from feral dogs that have refused to enter the river, and proceed to nudge and push the dog that's in the river to a part of the bank away from the other dogs and to apparent safety.
Wow. That's quite cool. But why?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
That's wild.
It could be anything. It could be just, general sort of non-useful play behavior. It could be genuine cross-species emotional empathy. It could be they were trying to eat him but failed miserably and just happened to push it out of the bank. I don't know.
I mean, like...
I can't imagine it's the last one, because I would have thought a mugger crocodile wanting to eat a dog could eat a dog. Especially they're 3 adult mugger crocodiles. They're not small crocs.
Yeah, they're no joke, man. They could wreck any dog.
But instead they push it out of the river onto the bank and away it goes.
This is the kind of thing that Joe Rogan will take to be direct evidence of between species empathy.
To be fair, how else would it look? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it does look like that. It sounds like that. I'd love to see a video. I really would love to know what was going on in the minds of these crocodiles.
I'll quickly send you the images, just so you're...
Yeah. Let me see.
You've got maximum information here.
All right.
There you go.
Let's see here.
I'm assuming the golden dog is the dog that was fleeing, and the black and white dog on the bank is the problematic chasing dog, which subsequently gets...
Oh, that's a bully dog for sure.
Scared off. I mean, a dog in the water does not seem perturbed by the crocodiles either, but it also might be exhausted.
Yeah, it looks a bit perturbed, I would say. There's not a lot. Is this the entire imagery?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't really show anything except for the fact there's at least 3 crocodiles in the water and a dog and another dog. But yeah, really crazy compelling. Like, they saw that and that's crazy.
And nudged it towards the bank.
Yeah, wow, mad. Yeah, like you say, maybe they were playing, maybe they were helping. I mean, yeah, like my gut tells me they wouldn't have just been helping, but then again, like dolphins do it.
Yeah,
seals do it.
That's exactly sort of the point, isn't it? Is there's not really enough evidence to go one way or another, but it does sort of open some weird questions into what they were doing and how crocodiles, think and consider things.
Yeah, they do have it in their DNA to care about their offspring and worry that they're getting in and out of the water. So it's not like it's a behavior which is completely alien to them.
Yeah.
Wow. Very nice. That's great. Really cool. Oh, man. I'd love to see someone like better characterize the behavior of the hunting as well? Because that sounds like that is definitely some kind of collusion between crocodiles, which would be so fun.
I really don't know how you do that because of the murkiness of the water. To get good imagery, you'd need really fine scale accelerometer data and then sort of reconstruct the path. And that would get you something. That would be...
All right, then. Well, let's maybe write a grant about that because that sounds pretty awesome. All right, sweet. Well, Ace, good stuff. So yeah, we got Royal Pythons and their Piebald gene affected by a nonsense mutation of tfec, our new favourite gene.
That also works in anoles, but in a different way.
Works on anoles in a different way. Yep, I nearly said anoles. That's a Benism. Yeah, I feel like I don't think we've got much else to add, have we? Other than to say
no.
Thanks for listening, and we're on social media. You can get in touch with us through herphighlights@gmail.com. Big ups to all our patrons for supporting the podcast. You can at patreon.com/herphighlights. We also have merchandise, links in the description. You can buy a cool t-shirt, and yeah, until next time, thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening.